Throughout history, humanity has been propelled forward by brilliant visionaries. Men and women who looked at the impossible, laughed in the face of physics, and bent reality to their will. And then there's this guy. Welcome back to the Audacity of Him, the only channel on the internet dedicated to studying the breathtaking, pantheon-level nerve of history's greatest con men, grifters, and corporate sociopaths. I'm your host, and today we are going to talk about a man who looked at the electric vehicle revolution, looked at billions of dollars of investor capital, and said, what if we just rolled a giant piece of plastic down a hill? Today's subject is Trevor Milton, the founder of Nikola Motor Company, a man who promised the world a revolutionary zero-emission hydrogen electric semi-truck that would change logistics forever. He promised a vehicle so advanced, so flawlessly engineered, that it briefly made his company more valuable than the Ford Motor Company. There was just one tiny, microscopic, easily overlooked problem. The truck didn't have an engine. It didn't have a fuel cell. It didn't even have a functioning dashboard. Trevor Milton had built a multi-billion-dollar empire using the oldest, most reliable, most zero-emissions propulsion system known to man. Gravity. Strap in. Or don't. We're not actually going anywhere. We're just coasting downhill. To understand the sheer, unadulterated audacity of Trevor Milton, we have to go back to the mid-2010s. It was a simpler time. We were all so innocent. The electric vehicle boom was just beginning to make Wall Street lose its collective mind, and Tesla was transforming from a quirky Silicon Valley startup into an absolute juggernaut. Elon Musk was being hailed as a real-life Tony Stark rather than whatever it is we're calling him today. Investors were salivating. They had missed out on the ground floor of Tesla, and they were desperate for the next Tesla. They wanted the next visionary, the next disruptor, the next guy who would tweet something vaguely coherent and make them millions. Enter Trevor Milton. Trevor was a serial entrepreneur. Now, in Silicon Valley speak, serial entrepreneur usually means one of two things. Either you've built and sold 5 successful tech platforms, or you've started 6 companies that sold overpriced driveway sealant and a home security alarm system that was just a loud dog on a tape recorder. Trevor leaned closer to the latter. He had a few ventures under his belt, including an alternative fuel company that he exited under, let's just call it, murky, legally combative circumstances. But Trevor was charismatic. He had the uniform down perfectly. The quarter-zip fleece, the tailored jeans, the intense, unblinking eye contact of a man who is either about to pitch you a revolutionary tech platform or ask you to join a multi-level marketing scheme selling acai berries. And Trevor looked at Tesla, the company named after legendary inventor Nikola Tesla, and he had a stroke of absolute, pure, unimaginative genius. He thought, what if I just take the guy's first name? I am honestly shocked that the tech world didn't stop him right there. It's like starting a burger joint across the street from McDonald's and calling it Ronald's. It's like starting a streaming service to compare with Netflix and calling it Net Movies. But Wall Street didn't care. They saw a guy with a slick presentation, a vaguely scientific company name, and a promise to disrupt the trucking industry. Trevor didn't want to make passenger cars. He wanted to make big rigs, semi-trucks, the massive leviathans that move all of our cheap plastic crap from the ports to the big box stores. And he wasn't just going to use batteries, he was going to use hydrogen fuel cells. Hydrogen! It sounds like the future! It's the most abundant element in the universe! It sounds complicated enough that an investor with a business degree from Cornell would nod thoughtfully and pretend to understand it rather than ask follow-up questions. Trevor claimed Nikola had cracked the code. He claimed they were building a massive network of hydrogen fueling stations across the country. He claimed their trucks would have a range of 1,000 miles, refuel in 15 minutes, and emit nothing but pure water vapor. You could practically drink from the tailpipe. Note, please do not drink from tailpipes. There was just one catch. To get billions of dollars in funding, you have to actually show people a truck. December 1st, 2016, Salt Lake City, Utah. The grand unveiling of the Nikola One. This is the moment. The room is packed with journalists, investors, and industry executives. The lights dim. The bass-heavy EDM music bumps. And Trevor Milton steps onto the stage to pull back the curtain on the future of transportation. He grabs the tarp, gives it a dramatic yank, and reveals the Nikola One. And folks, it looked awesome. It looked like a spaceship that had a baby with an 18-wheeler. It was sleek, aerodynamic, and massive. And Trevor was hyping it up with the confidence of a man who had already secured a private island. He stood up there on that stage and uttered a sentence that would eventually become the crown jewel of federal prosecutors' exhibits. He literally said, and I quote, "This truck will come fully functioning and completely ready to go. We are not making this a pusher." Spoiler alert, it was the mother of all pushers. It turns out the Nikola One sitting on that stage was as functional as a prop on a high school theater set. It was a hollow shell, a life-size Hot Wheels car. Let me break down exactly how fully functioning this truck was, according to the SEC and the Department of Justice later on. 1. It had no fuel cell. 2. It had no hydrogen tanks. 3. It had no motor. 4. It had no gears. 5. The infotainment screens inside the cab that looked so high-tech, they were literally standard LCD monitors powered by a cord that was secretly running off stage to a laptop hidden in the wings. Oh, and 6, my personal favorite detail. The warning lights and the buttons on the dashboard were stenciled on, like with paint. It was the vehicular equivalent of drawing a six-pack on your stomach with a Sharpie. But wait, it gets better. Because they had to get this giant hollow paperweight onto the stage, and remember, it doesn't have an engine. So how did they move it? They had to use a secret winch system beneath the stage to drag it out. And because Trevor Milton is a man who loves to live dangerously, he reportedly ordered his team to hook up the truck to a battery just so the headlights would turn on. The engineers were terrified. They literally had a meeting where they warned Trevor that because the wiring was basically held together by hopes, dreams, and spit, turning on the power might cause the entire truck to spontaneously combust during the presentation. He did it anyway. He risked a massive chemical fire in a crowded auditorium of billionaires just to make the blinkers work. That is not fraud, ladies and gentlemen. That is show business. So, you've faked the reveal. You got the press. You got the hype. But eventually, people are going to want to see this thing actually drive. You can't just keep a semi-truck on a stage forever like a museum exhibit. You have to put it on the road. Which brings us to 2018, the Mona Lisa of corporate deception. The promotional video simply titled, Nikola One in Motion. Look at it go, cutting through the wind, a marvel of modern engineering. Zero emissions, zero noise. Also, zero engines. You see, despite 2 years having passed since the dramatic tarp pull, the Nikola One was still just a hollow shell. They still hadn't built a working hydrogen truck. But the marketing department needed a video. They needed footage of the truck driving to secure more funding and partnerships. So, how do you film a truck driving when the truck cannot, under any circumstances, drive? If you were a sane person, you might say, we wait until the truck is finished. If you were a Hollywood director, you might say, we use CGI. But if you were Trevor Milton, you look at your team of highly educated, well-paid engineers, point to a map of Utah and say, find me a long, low-grade hill. This is not a joke. This is a legally documented fact. The team loaded this multi-ton, engineless husk of a truck onto a flatbed trailer. They drove it out to a remote 2-lane road in the Mormon Trail area of Utah, a road that just so happens to have a remarkably long, steady 2-mile decline. They towed the Nikola One up to the very top of the hill. They unhooked it. The driver took his foot off the brake, and they just let it roll. They built a multi-billion-dollar company by reinventing the soapbox derby. But it takes a lot of cinematic finesse to make a rolling brick look like a self-propelled vehicle. Because if you just film a truck rolling down a hill, it looks like a truck rolling down a hill. The background is angled, the physics look weird. So, what did the brilliant minds at Nikola do? They tilted the camera! They literally angled the camera to make the steep hill look like a perfectly flat piece of desert highway. It was a Dutch angle used not for artistic tension, but for felony securities fraud. Let's just take a moment to imagine the logistics of this shoot. Imagine being the driver inside the Nikola One. You have no power steering, you have no engine braking. You are sitting in a hollow fiberglass coffin hurtling down a public road in Utah at 50 miles an hour, powered entirely by the gravitational pull of the earth, praying to God that the brakes, which may or may not be securely attached, don't fail. And they didn't just do this once, they had to get multiple takes. They had to tow this massive fake truck back up the hill, unhook it, and roll it down again. Up the hill, down the hill, like a tragically pathetic zero-emission version of Sisyphus. And the kicker? They posted the video to all their social media channels, sent it to investors, and claimed it was proof of their breakthrough technology. When people later asked, hey, was that truck actually driving under its own power? Trevor Milton's defense was basically, well, I never said it was driving under its own propulsion. The video is called Nikola One in Motion, and technically, it was in motion. Your Honor, my client did not lie. He is simply an aficionado of Isaac Newton's first law of motion. An object at rest stays at rest, and a hollow truck rolling down a hill stays rolling down a hill until it hits a ditch or the SEC finds out. Now, you might think a stunt like this would eventually catch up to them before any real money changed hands. You would be underestimating the sheer, blinding incompetence of Wall Street during the SPAC boom. For those who don't know, a SPAC, or SPAC, is basically a shell company that is already on the stock market. It merges with a private company to take them public faster, bypassing all those annoying, pesky, traditional IPO regulations. You know, things like audits and due diligence, and verifying that your products actually exist. In June 2020, Nikola went public via a SPAC, and the market went completely rabid. Retail investors, institutional investors, Robinhood day traders, they all piled in. Within days of going public, Nikola's stock price exploded. At its peak, this company, a company that had $0 in revenue, had never sold a single product, and whose flagship vehicle was a gravity-powered soapbox racer, achieved a market valuation of $34 billion. I want you to really process that number. $34 billion. For a brief, shining, utterly hallucinatory moment, Nikola Motor Company was worth more than the Ford Motor Company. Ford! The people who invented the assembly line. The people who sell an F-150 every 35 seconds. Valued less than a guy who stenciled buttons onto a piece of plastic. And the audacity didn't stop with retail investors. Corporate America wanted a piece of the magic beans. In September 2020, General Motors, yes, that General Motors, the largest automaker in America, announced a massive strategic partnership with Nikola. GM agreed to engineer and manufacture Nikola's new pickup truck, the Badger, and in exchange, GM would take an 11% stake in Nikola, worth about $2 billion at the time. Mary Barra, the CEO of GM, went on television and touted the partnership. GM's army of lawyers, engineers, and financial analysts supposedly spent months conducting due diligence. How? How did GM's due diligence team miss this? Did they walk into a Nikola facility, see a truck shell propped up on cinder blocks, and say, "Wow, look at those aerodynamics"? Did they ask to see the hydrogen fuel cell, and Trevor Milton just pointed out the window and shouted, "Look, a squirrel," and ran away? We may never know. But for exactly 48 hours, Trevor Milton was the undisputed king of the automotive world. And then, the blimp crashed. Just 2 days after the massive General Motors partnership was announced, a financial research firm specializing in short selling dropped a report. The firm was named, rather appropriately, Hindenburg Research. For those unfamiliar, short sellers are investors who make money when a stock's price goes down. They do this by sniffing out frauds, publishing massive, heavily researched reports exposing the fraud, and then sitting back to watch the chaos unfold. Hindenburg released a 67-page report titled Nikola: How to Parlay an Ocean of Lies into a Partnership with the Largest Auto OEM in America. It is, without a doubt, one of the most savage, entertaining, and utterly devastating documents ever written in modern finance. It was basically a corporate diss track. Kendrick Lamar could learn a thing or two from Hindenburg. They laid out everything. They exposed the stenciled dashboard. They exposed the fake hydrogen stations. And most famously, they exposed the hill. Hindenburg investigators actually tracked down the exact 2-mile stretch of road in Utah, went out there, put their own SUV in neutral, and filmed themselves rolling down the exact same hill, proving definitively that gravity was the only fuel at work. Panic set in. The stock started to plummet. And how did Trevor Milton, billionaire CEO, respond to these meticulously documented allegations of massive securities fraud? He did what any responsible, mature executive would do. He took to Twitter and started rage posting. He promised a detailed, devastating rebuttal. He claimed the shorts were just haters trying to manipulate the market. He posted pictures of himself looking defiant. He promised that a massive document drop was coming that would destroy Hindenburg forever. We're still waiting, Trevor. Within weeks, the SEC announced an investigation. The Department of Justice announced an investigation. General Motors quietly backed slowly into the bushes like Homer Simpson and drastically scaled back their partnership. By September 20th, just weeks after having achieved a $34 billion valuation, Trevor Milton resigned from the company he founded, wiped his social media, and vanished into the Utah desert, presumably rolling down a hill to make his escape. The wheels of justice move slowly, but they do not need an engine to run you over. In July 2021, Trevor Milton was officially indicted by a federal grand jury on multiple counts of securities fraud and wire fraud. The prosecutors accused him of being a con man who lied about nearly every aspect of his business to inflate the stock price and enrich himself. During the trial in 2022, the defense strategy was a masterclass in the, "Bro, I was just hyping it up," legal defense. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my client is not a criminal mastermind. He is merely a golden retriever in the human suit. He's an optimistic visionary, a cheerleader. Is it a crime to love your company too much? Is it a crime to be overly enthusiastic? Is it a crime to roll a fake truck down a hill and tell the world it's a technological breakthrough? The jury deliberated for about 5 seconds and said, yes, literally yes, that is the exact definition of the crime. Trevor Milton was found guilty. In December 2023, he was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. 4 years! A remarkably light sentence when you consider he vaporized billions of dollars of investor wealth. But hey, white-collar crime pays, folks! He was ordered to report to prison, and that should have been the end of it. A fitting end for the gravity-powered tech bro. But wait, we live in the 2020s. We don't get normal endings anymore. We get plot twists written by a hack screenwriter who has given up on realism. Fast forward to early 2025. A new administration is in the White House. The pardon pin is out, and who among the vast sea of incarcerated receives the glorious unmerited grace of a presidential pardon? You guessed it, our boy Trevor. In one of the most baffling pardons in recent history, Trevor Milton's sentence was commuted. The rationale? Something about stifling innovation and overzealous regulatory overreach. Yes, sending a man to prison for lying to investors about a truck that didn't have an engine is stifling innovation. I guess the government decided we desperately need more men who know how to expertly utilize a steep incline. So Trevor Milton walked free, a billionaire, or close enough despite the fines, pardoned and likely sitting on a beach right now pitching a seagull on a zero-emission hydrogen-powered surfboard that only works if the tide is going out. Let's take a step back and marvel at the sheer, unadulterated weapons-grade audacity of Trevor Milton. Elizabeth Holmes faked blood tests. That took actual machines, labs, and complicated software to fake. Sam Bankman-Fried built a labyrinth crypto exchange in the Bahamas. Trevor Milton looked at a hill. He looked at a hollow piece of fiberglass. And he convinced the largest automaker in America and thousands of investors that he had solved the global energy crisis. He built a $34 billion fortune entirely on the concept of downward momentum. Isaac Newton discovered gravity. Trevor Milton monetized it. And that, my friends, is why he belongs in the Hall of Fame of Audacity. It's almost inspiring. The next time you feel unqualified for a job, the next time you feel imposter syndrome creeping in, just remember, a guy without a working engine convinced the world he was going to beat Tesla. So go out there, tilt your camera, and coast down that hill of life. Thank you so much for watching The Audacity of Him. If you enjoyed this deep dive into corporate delusion, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, like Trevor Milton smashing a stenciled-on dashboard button, and ring the bell so you never miss an episode. Leave a comment down below. Which scammer should I cover next? And if anyone has a spare low-grade hill I can borrow, let me know. I've got a great idea for a flying car. I'm your host, and until next time, keep your engines real and your hills flat. See ya!